We've just made a global offer that we think shows a pathway to getting this difference resolved and getting it done on a timely basis. They took the balance remaining after the general fund spending for the reinsurance, and then we set aside the money for the courts, which is the full request of the Chief Justice, which I've maintained all along should be considered separately and should be honored for as it is. The cybersecurity is the number that is necessary to provide the kind of security that the state computer systems need. That obviously benefits the legislature as much as the executive branch, so we'd set that aside as well. If that's not to be funded, then it's not to be funded. But people need to know that all the records they have contained within various state computer systems are going to be put at an unacceptable risk. And that leaves us in $1,384,131,000, and we're proposing to meet halfway. The two priority items for them are the tax bill, transportation, both of which reduce money from the general fund, and the remainder are expenditures, some of which I would note they've also agreed to. For example, the K-12 formula is part of their budget as well as ours, but we're putting all that on the bottom line in terms of spending, and we're proposing that they would come back tomorrow with their particulars on the transportation taxes. We'd come back tomorrow with our particulars on the others, and we go back and forth in terms of those particulars. This is a final resolution. We're not signing off to them, you can do the tax and transportation however you want, but they take the lead on that. Same thing with the other items. We're not saying we would dictate that. We'd come back with our proposal and they'd have to look at it. But I think this is fair, equitable, half and half, meet halfway. And I think Minnesota's going to understand that's a fair and reasonable offer, and it gets us to a conclusion. Anything else? No. That's it?
You say tomorrow, they said 7 to 9.
Well, we're coming back to some night, right? We won't have the detailed sheets in terms of what underlies those respective offers until tomorrow, but we'll come back at 7 to get their response.
Your combined transportation and tax cut number was bigger yesterday than it is today. How is that moving the ball?
Sorry, say again?
Yesterday, your amount that you had set aside for tax cuts and transportation seemed bigger than it is today. I'm having trouble understanding.
I think that's because we included the tab fee depreciation change.
That's gone?
It's still up to them to include that in there, but we didn't assume that they wanted to include that.
I don't understand what you're referencing.
He's saying
the half and half
we
is the
had more
general
money for
fund
transportation. That's
remainder.
because we had the tab fees in there to contribute to the transportation number.
Other questions?
So explain where the license tab fee issue is. Is that still up for negotiation?
Well, we'll wait and see their response to if they agree to this principle that we'll meet halfway, then that halfway mark for the revenue reductions, which is taxes and transportation, the way they funded out of the general fund, is the $682 million. Question for them is, how do they propose to achieve that number? If we agree upon that as the target, then if it's going to be out of the general fund for transportation, that's less money for the tax bill and vice versa. So we're leaving it to them to decide. We have our proposal again with the license tab fees, which they've rejected. So then, if they're proposing to take it all out of the general fund, then they need to tell us where it's not going to be in the tax bill.
Is this an increase for courts? Because I thought I remembered it was a $51 million increase from the Chief Justice. Is this an increase in courts?
It's an increase for the courts.
This is for the entire court system, not just the district courts.
Right. Right.
Everything, public defenders.
Right. Okay.
Governor, the bonding bill went down to the Minnesota House. Some Republicans, some Democrats had a hand in doing that. Your thoughts on it? Do we get a bonding bill this year or not?
For the DFL leaders.
So the bonding bill, the bonding chair asked my members to vote for it on faith that items would be added later. And I said that the way that we should pass legislation is we should see the full bill in writing, the full spreadsheet in writing before anybody votes in favor of it. We're not taking a leap of faith on the basis of what happened with the tax bill and the bonding bill at the end of last session. We need all the details spelled out before we would commit to supporting it.
So what happens with bonding going forward then? Do we expect no bonding bill? Do you think there's still time to reconfigure one?
There's absolutely time. My understanding is that Senator Senjem and Representative Erdahl are working together on a proposal that they believe can pass both bodies, and that as soon as they have that language agreed to, that they will find a way to post that publicly, whether it's a delete all amendment on their committee sites or a delete all amendment posted to a bill on the House floor, so everybody can see exactly what the proposed agreement is.
What's the magic number if 800 wasn't it?
That's slightly above my pay grade.
Oh.
Well, I don't think we know, but I think the kind of interesting thing is there's a lot of talk about the respective chairs in the House and the Senate working on a joint document that they can agree on. I just would remind them, nobody has asked me yet about one line on a bonding bill spreadsheet. And Senator Senjum's my friend, but he's not going to pass that bill without the help of my caucus. So I think if he wants to get one, he'd be wise to probably engage the minority in that conversation sooner rather than later.
And the governor's office too, I might add.
It's within the governor's authority whether you can. I remember one year under Governor Ventura, he actually vetoed $350 million worth of projects out of the bonding bill when he got it. So I mean, the governor ultimately has the say on what survives.
Governor, what's your optimism level on getting a bonding bill at this point?
I mean, I think as Representative Hortman said, it's possible, but it's to be determined by what plays out. I mean, nothing is cast in stone over the remaining 5 days. It depends on how everyone responds and whether there's a willingness to meet the accommodations. As Senator Bakk just said, that the bonding bill has to be bipartisan. So, you know, that's the reality that hopefully the majority will accept and deal with, and we can work it out.
Is a bonding bill just a tad under $1 billion better than something that you proposed?
I don't want to prejudge that. Well, I think 1.5 billion is appropriate. There wasn't one last year. I had almost $4 billion of requests, most of them very good requests, urgently needed. So, I mean, even the Senate bill, which is a little under mine, you know, had cut out, as I did, a lot of projects. The House bill, I agree, is, you know, unacceptably low. But, you know, where the midpoint is that legislators will agree to. Bonding is making investments in our future. Higher education facilities, just crucial. You know, we bring those up, and we also have the money to repair the existing facilities if we want to have a world-class higher education system. It's just so obvious to me the need to make these investments. Interest rates are still relatively low. Our bonded rating is high. We rank about the mid of the states in terms of bonded indebtedness per capita. We've managed the state budget, including the capital commitments, very responsibly. Everybody who's assessed from the outside has said that. So, you know, to have them pick an arbitrary number, 800 million, 995 million, because it's less than $1 billion, that's not the way to make these crucial decisions. And look at the projects that are cut out for University of Minnesota, the Minnesota State campuses. I mean, look at what we're not doing with their numbers, and you know, I'm appalled.
Governor, the impression from Republican lawmakers that this is something they're willing to consider, your halfway offer, or what kind?
They just took it back now to consider that they're going to come back at 7.
Governor, the Republican leaders referred to your offer as different. Can you talk about your decision to go in this slightly new direction of offering the halfway split instead of continuing with the back and forth ping pong that had been going on?
Yeah, one of the global offer. This is one where we're willing to meet them halfway. You know, I mean, we've got a gap between us of what is 1 point. If you want to take the total one, we got a gap between us of $1.5 billion. How are we going to reconcile that? Trading offers back and forth this Wednesday. So this is fair. You know, their priorities are taxes and transportation, both of which reduce revenues to the general fund. Our priorities are some of the other areas. We share priorities on the taxes and transportation as well as the others. But this says, well, you know, we'll meet you halfway. If this is not agreeable to them, then we need to hear at 7 o'clock how they would prefer to pursue this.
Are you comfortable with any level of tax cut within that number or transportation? Is this like a choose your own adventure thing where they get to say, you know, we want $100 million for transportation and $500 million for tax cuts? Is that, I'm just trying to understand.
They're going to take the lead in that. We want to hear from them since those are their priority areas. I mean, if they agree to this concept, which they haven't yet, then the 682 is saying, you know, you tell us how you would allocate that. We're not deferring or relinquishing our responsibility on that, but we'll react to their proposal as they'll react to our proposal on the other items. We're still going to have to thrash that out. If we were to proceed on this basis, we'd thrash it out tomorrow, but we could get it done in time for the revisor to get these bills put forward. And you know, as Senator Bakk was saying, they have to go back to I mean, I don't understand the technical procedures, but they have to, you know, the conference committees have closed, so they have to, I mean, we got to get this done in short order if we're going to they're going to meet the deadline next Monday.
You ever also said about this offer, quote, it doesn't meet halfway, which I guess was referring to setting aside courts and cybersecurity before doing the split.
If they want to, I mean, again, they can come back with an offer. If they want to reject doing anything in cybersecurity, then we'll reject it. But quibbling it down is not going to do it. We're going to be honest with the people of Minnesota. If we don't have the resources to provide the kind of cybersecurity protection we think is essential, then we're not going to. Halfway measures are inadequate. Similar to the courts, you know, I mean, if they don't want to fund the courts, then they need to talk to the Chief Justice and the judiciary about their unwillingness to do so. So if they don't agree to them, they don't agree to them. But I think would be ill-advised.
Quick second, Governor. The Senate passed the elections omnibus bill the other day by single vote. You've already said that you were likely to veto that. Has anything changed on your stance there?
No, nothing's changed since I took office and followed the lead of Governor Plenty and said that they need any changed election law, campaign finance law needs to pass with broad bipartisan support, and that bill falls decidedly below that requirement.
Okay. Governor, is it your hope that by splitting $682 million between taxes and transportation, you force Republicans to consider some amount of new revenue for transportation?
I mean, I leave it to them if they agree to that number to decide how they're going to arrive there. Just as we got to decide on the other 682 how to achieve that. These are going to be really painful cuts. Painful for them in terms of what they want to do on tax reductions. It's going to be painful for the people of Minnesota who are not going to get services, education funding, and for people to rely on health and human services. I mean, these cuts are going to be severe on both sides. So the question is, are we going to meet halfway, which seems to be sharing equally that burden of making reductions that none of us want to make. If they're not agreeable to that, then we need to hear at 7 how they propose to do it differently. I'm not going to prejudge that.